Folks should be incoming.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us today. We'll wait just a moment here to let everyone get into the meeting. Just so you know, today's meeting will be recorded. You had to accept a little thing, probably popped up. So if you don't want to appear, you can go ahead and turn off your video. You will be muted for the meeting. We have a lot of people in here, but if you have any questions for Dr. Masabni, you can put them in the chat and we will get to those at the end of the presentation. So again, for those of you just joining, this meeting is being recorded. So if you don't want to appear, you can go ahead and turn off your video sharing. Also, you will be muted for the meeting, but if you have any questions for the presenter, Dr. Masabni, you can always put those in the chat. That's available. And also, for those of you who requested seeds, those will be going out tomorrow. Not everyone may be getting one of the ones that was created for this program because we have a limited number of those, but I will find some other seeds to send out to you though, so everyone who requested them. However, if you requested them to be mailed or to a location that's not a Dallas Public Library branch, unfortunately, I will not be able to get those to you. We can only send them to the branches, the Dallas Public Library branches. So we won't be able to mail out any or send them to another city's department. So thank you for joining us. And I'll turn it over to Helen with the Dallas Environmental Quality Services Department, or sorry, Sustainability Department. And she'll talk a little bit about what she does and introduce our wonderful presenter for the day. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Vanessa. I'm so excited to be here. It's been a beautiful weekend and our weather is it's perfect today also. I think everyone's itching to get out in the garden and plant some stuff. And I'm going to go through my introduction pretty quickly so we can get to all the great information Dr. Joe has for us today. So like Vanessa said, my name is Helen Dulac and I am with the City of Dallas Environmental Quality and Sustainability. And we are beyond excited to be partnering with the Dallas Seed Library on this series called Grow With Us, which is on Mondays at noon. And I just want to give you a little bit of information about my department because you probably never heard of us before. So we were formed back in 2004 and we were called the Office of Environmental Quality. And we worked really hard for 4 years to get the city of Dallas to become the first city in the United States to achieve a special environmental certification. It's an international certification that a lot of like large manufacturers have. It's called ISO 14001. And one of the other important things about this is that we're talking about Dallas, Texas going green here. We're not talking about a city in California. We're not talking about a city in Colorado. We're not talking about Austin. We're talking about Dallas that did this first. So we are trying to be green and we just want to go greener and we're going to do that with your help. So let's fast forward 10 years to 2018 where a lot of changes happened to this department. There was a restructuring in the city and some other environmental programs and operations transferred over and we doubled in size. And to reflect that change, we changed our name and that's when we became the Office of Environmental Quality and Sustainability. Also that year with that merger, we created a combined outreach and engagement team that I'm a proud member of. The following year in 2019, Mayor Johnson created the first city council committee focused on the environment. It's called the Environment and Sustainability Committee. They have their meetings live streamed the first Monday of every month. They are open to the public, and it's a great way to see what the green or environmental pulse of the city is and learn about a lot of different kinds of changes and different pilot projects that we are starting. Now, if you have heard of this department, it's probably because May 27th of last year, we passed the Comprehensive Environmental and Climate Action Plan known as CCAP. We're really excited about this plan because it's our roadmap for the next 30 years on how we're going to mitigate climate change and improve the environment and quality of life for everybody in Dallas. You can see all 250 pages of the plan at dallasclimateaction.com. And you're going to see a lot of the things that the city does are related to that plan, including this whole series of presentations. So I mentioned that this department doubled in size. Well, those groups in green are the ones that joined us in 2018. And I want to talk about one of those just briefly, and that is stormwater. So stormwater is any time water flows over your property and is not absorbed into the ground. So if this water leaves your property and goes into the street, it's going to flow all the way down that gutter to that big drain at the end of the street. That big drain is called a storm drain inlet, and it's there for one reason, and that's to make sure the streets don't flood. And they do such a good job that any water, whether it comes from the rain, whether it comes from a hose, whether it comes from snow melt, which we've seen, all of that water goes directly to a creek and eventually into one of our beautiful lakes or into the Trinity River. And so that means if that water picks up any pollution along the way, it is not removed. That water is not cleaned, it is not treated. So if it picks up litter, if it picks up automotive fluids that were on the driveway, if it picks up any extra lawn chemicals that your neighbors might have put out, if it picks up bacteria that's in pet waste, that's how those pollutants get into our lakes and the Trinity River. And the Trinity River flows an additional 500 miles all the way to the Gulf of Mexico. So there is a chance that pollution from Dallas, from our own homes, from our own neighborhoods, have made it all the way to the dolphins in the Gulf of Mexico. So just be mindful about what you're doing outside. Please pick up after your pets. Please don't litter. And we can keep that water clean for everybody. I mentioned I'm a member of the outreach and engagement team, and we want to empower Dallas to save the earth. And we do that by doing virtual presentations like this one and in person when we're allowed. We can actually present for your HOA or different kinds of clubs and organizations at no cost if you're in Dallas, and we can do that virtually. We also have a lot of different kinds of materials and activities for students all the way from K to college, and we can participate in your seminars, activities, and events. And we also host a few of our own. Upcoming, we have some really neat ones. We have Fix a Leak Week coming up, which is a partnership between 3 different cities, Fort Worth, Dallas, and Houston. We also have the Climate Change Symposium that I think it's either going to be in late March or early April, and that's tied with that CCAP plan. And we host a WaterWise landscape tour every fall, usually in October or November. You can see last year's virtual tour at savedallaswater.com. Now, if you invite us to talk, what do we talk about? Well, we talk about those environmental topics from A to Z, all the way from air quality to zero waste. So I want to encourage you to visit our website, greendallas.net. You can fill out the event request form, and that's how you can invite us out to your virtual meeting. And also follow us on social media. We are Green Dallas TX on Facebook and at Green Dallas at Twitter and Instagram. So you can learn about programs like this and all these other things that we're going to be doing as time goes on. So it is my extreme pleasure to introduce our speaker today. Actually, I want to welcome him back. We haven't seen him since 2020. So Dr. Joe Masabny's area of expertise is vegetable production for small acreage producers. Research interest is to develop production systems for high tunnel vegetables, aquaponics production, and pesticide and variety trials. His extension activities include developing online and printed materials for vegetable, organic, and conventional producers and homeowners. And he hosts workshops, conferences, and he assists the county extension agencies serving Texas clientele. And so with that, Dr. Joe, welcome back, and let's get started.
Thank you very much. I'm sharing my screen. I hope you can see it now and we can get started. All right, welcome. Well, great. Today's topic is dear to me because coming from Lebanon, we have a different variety and taste of herbs and greens and stuff. So always fascinated when I meet someone, ask them what do they grow that's not on the common menu of typical American recipes and dishes. So I'm always interested with that, always interested in trying new things. And I'll be sharing with you some of the, not everything on the planet, but a few that we've played with. By the way, this presentation was prepared by a good friend of mine, a great master gardener, Mr. Paul Iyer. We've done a lot of work together, and some of the pictures you'll see is from his garden when he was in Beaumont. I want to give him a shout out for being a great supporter of gardening and Texas A&M. Okay, well, what makes unusual vegetables? What makes them unique? Well, nothing really, anything special. It's just something that you're not familiar with. What you're not familiar with may be a staple for other people. For example, well, maybe here you know what jicama is, but if you go to up north and you tell them what's jicama, they'll laugh at you. They think it's a comma, a period and a comma and a question mark. But someone from Mexico, it's native staple they eat every day, just like taro is for Hawaiians. Another example, chayote squash. Creole, I don't know it. I mean, not very familiar with it, never cooked it for sure, but it's a staple for Creoles and they call it mirliton. South Americans call it mango squash. So that is what's unique about it. It's just like everything else, taste is acquired. You just have to eat it enough times so you can enjoy it. And then one day you miss it and you want to buy it and purchase it. So keep your mind and your taste buds open to try new thing. And as you will see, many of them has many nutritional benefits too. Okay, so again, why they are unique? Well, some vegetables are unique because they are part of a specific cuisine. For example, molokhia is a staple for us. Molokhia actually means fit for kings. It's very popular, Africa, Middle East. When I was in Dominican Republic, they grow it there. I guess that was brought in from Africa. Fennel, I'm sure you know fennel, but it's typical. Now it's popular, but in the old days it was just used by the Italian cuisine. Tomatillo traditionally has been used by Mexican cuisine. Now it's becoming more and more accepted and popular, and you find it at Walmart and other stores. Other crops are unique because they're difficult to grow, or they're not suited for your climate that you are. Globe artichoke, we are learning how to grow it. Texas A&M has done great research at the Weslaco Center. But another example is rhubarb. I can teach you how to grow rhubarb as an annual crop, because I was in Michigan and I miss it. And it does not tolerate the heat. It's difficult to grow here. It will die. It will not tolerate the heat. But if you plant it in September and it'll grow over the winter, even last month, freeze storm would not phase it, because it's covered by little snow, and you'll harvest it, and in June you dig it up and throw it away. Difficult to grow. That's what kind of makes it unique, and not very unique in the sense that it's not very common and everybody grows it like you would think okra or watermelon in Texas. That's what I mean. Okay, and of course some other crops are unique because they have a unique taste that's acquired. Salsify, I'll show you how it looks. I'm told that it tastes like oysters. I've never eaten the roots, but I'm told that the roots the taproot tastes like oysters. Okahijiki is salty. It's I mean, you can water it with salt water, and it'll survive. So we may not be accustomed to eating something that's already salty. And bitter melon, of course, the name tells you that it's bitter. It's an acquired taste. You'll just have to cook it the right way and with the right ingredient to make it edible and enjoyable. And like I said before, they are all nutrition. And to me, as a general rule, leaves or leafy greens or anything that you eat, the leafy part that is green is definitely more nutritious than the fruiting vegetables. So a green lettuce, like a head lettuce that has green leaves, is more nutritious than, sorry, the outer leaves, the green, are more nutritious than the inner leaves that are white. Okay, and spinach that is green leaf is definitely more nutritious in some things than others, than a tomato or a cucumber. I mean, tomato may beat the spinach with some things, but in general, the rule is the leafy greens and the green leaves are more nutritious than the fruiting parts. You may get sugar from watermelon, you may get this anthocyanin or that, but overall, they don't beat the greens. Okay, what like you eat here, of course, this shows beans, but if it was peas, it would have been a better picture to show you, to stress the point that I'm trying to make here, is that we eat the pods only, whether it's a snow peas or English peas or whatever. But in other countries, the young tender shoots of the peas or the bean plants are edible too, and they're still nutritious. So it's a shame that we only eat the beans when the stem and these leaves, you saute them, you cook them, you boil them, you add them to the stew. There's a lot of nutrition there that we are wasting, and just if we are lucky, putting them in the compost pile. So chili pepper, you know chili pepper, you eat the chili pepper, but in Southeast Asia, even the leaves of chili peppers are eaten, and they have a little bit of a bite, like a spicy bite to them. Okay. Other example of fruits or roots that are the primary crops, but the leaves are also consumed. I mentioned peas and beans, but plantain, cassava, cucumber leaves, I've tested them when radish, we eat that in Lebanon all the time. Radish leaves, of course, young and tender, not the oldest and tough as wood. Sweet potato, the tendrils are just as sweet. The shoot tips, not the whole stem. The shoot tips are just as sweet and very tasty. Of course, when you cook them, many of these that you see here listed here, not so much fresh, eaten fresh, I mean. Okay, so many of these unique fruits and vegetables migrate from one country to another, whether with people, migration, whether sometimes chefs, they learned cooking skills in France or Japan, and they bring those skills and then they introduce and they request from growers, hey, grow for me pak choy or bamboo shoots because I want to make these unique dishes, or daikon radish, I want to make these unique dishes. Okay, of course, another reason how new vegetables are introduced into the palate of American cuisine is that sometimes the consumer, the public travels overseas. Not just the chefs come back, but the public itself travels and they taste beautiful dishes in the Orient, and they request those dishes or those herbs or spices, or want to grow them when they come back. Okay, so you see here dandelion, lamb's quarters, and sorrel. You may be familiar with dandelion as a weed. I see it all the time now. They're starting, the flower already opened, everything. But I remember when I was in Michigan, there was a big fuss of police catching an old lady with a knife in her hand, and they wanted to arrest her because she was threatening the public. And this 80-year-old lady was just going around in the spring digging up the dandelion rosettes, just before they start to flower, to cook it. And she was from Lebanon, and she didn't speak English, and it was a big fuss. And finally, it was all settled out, and the police were laughing, and they all left, and they hugged and kissed. And when they found out that she was gonna cook this weed, they told her, please come pick them up from my yard. We have so much of them. Lamb's quarters, this is the wheat type, but there's other kinds that are not wheat. Actually, they've been bred to have more nutrition and more color and flavor to them. But even the wheat that you see outside, when they are young and tender, they are very tasty. And I have another story of an older German lady. One time she told me that when they were in Germany during World War II, and they were surrounded, if you remember the history, where they were surrounded and the Americans were dropping food supplies, that was the only food available for them, is the lamb's quarter weeds and all the weeds that were growing available for them, until finally the airplanes started dropping food and chocolate and bread and whatever. So it's all edible, and I hope you never have to reach, none of us have to reach a stage where you have to eat it because you have to, not because you want to. Okay, many of these are consumed cooked. I mean, we eat dandelion all the time, cook it, but I would not taste it. It's very bitter, very bitter. And in general, anything that's very bitter doesn't kill you, boil it, blanch it, cook it, lemon juice, olive oil, salt and pepper will be good. Okay, so like I said, leafy vegetables are among the most nutrition vegetables. Okay, you have vitamin E, you have vitamin C, you have K, you have all the other. I'm not a nutritionist, so I'm not going to dwell on this slide too much. Another benefit to them is that they grow fast. You can have multiple crops. Let's say, for example, the average grower, let's say with cilantro or with spinach. They grow it and or lettuce. They grow it till it's full size and it's a one-time harvest. No, take 1 or 2 leaves at a time, even if it's one leaf at a time, the biggest leaf from each plant, you have a salad and the plant is still there. Parsley, same thing. If you take one sprig from each plant, you have a salad and the plant is still growing. But even if you like radish, 30 days you're in and out, you can have multiple crops in a season.
Dr. Joe?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you think you could speak up just a little bit, please?
Speak up?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry.
No worries. Thank you so much.
Okay, I'll bring this closer to. Okay. Now, of course, when you cook something, some of the nutrient will be lost. So the best way is you can steam it instead of boil it. And if you do want to boil it, try not. Many of us throw away the water with where all the nutrient is. I'm learning to see how I can find recipes enjoying that liquid soup from boiling the vegetables instead of eating the mushy vegetables if I boil them. Okay, so let's see here, give you beautiful pictures. And this picture here that you see are in Beaumont with my dear friend and colleague, Mr. Iyer, who's, we've done a lot of trials together. He was like my contractor. Hey, here's some seeds, or here's some things, do this for me, and let's try this variety, or let's try this idea. And we both benefited. It was a great experience. Okay, arugula, endive, spinach, some are, lettuce you can eat, that you see here, you can eat fresh, but if they get really old, I've seen recipes where you can saute them. You don't think about sauteing lettuce, but it tastes just very good. Of course, endive, arugula, spinach, spinach both fresh or cooked, but most of them are cooked. And so here's an example of one that you may not be familiar with, but it's a staple in the Middle East, arugula. We call it roquette. It's the French name. It has a little bit of bite to it, kind of like mustard. Has a, but I tell everybody, if you like to eat mustard greens, there's no reason why not you can like that. It's the same family. It's the same taste, same idea. It has a little spice in it. Okay, I've eaten it when they're young and tender, like when I'm thinning extra thick, like you see here in the middle picture, an extra thin them, and they're still young seedlings. You can eat them fresh in a sandwich or in a salad, but when they are bigger, they're cooked is better. This has becoming more and more popular. The word arugula, I'm sure, is not I'm sure familiar to most of you, because in the last 10, 15 years, it has a surge in popularity. I bet you when I came many years ago to the United States, nobody would know what arugula was. Now, what can you do to avoid the bitterness or pungency? You grow something that you like it, but it's too spicy for you or too bitter. Well, there are ways you can do that. You can blanch it. You can exclude the light. Like, I don't know if you can see here this endive, and you see these orange juice. We grew the plants inside so that the orange juice box, we wrapped it around the plant. We brought all the leaves together and opened the box and wrapped it around it to exclude the light. So when you remove it, this is what you have here. The inside is lighter because it doesn't see the light. It's not going to make the chlorophyll or make photosynthesis, so it's going to be light. Just like you see blanched or white asparagus, that's not a variety. They just covered it with straw, so it does not see the light, and it's yellow instead of dark green asparagus. Same thing. That's called blanching, excluding the light. Yeah, there are other varieties. Companies are breeding always, so you can check the variety description in the catalog. They tell you less pungent or more pungent, etc. Or if the ideal, if you can wait till the fall and the temperature really drops, or maybe after the first minor freeze, not or frost, then many of these pungency disappear and they are very tasty. Okay, so how do you select the leafy vegetables? The first thing is what you like to eat and what tastes and smells great for you. what fits in your plant spacing, fits in your available sun, your water, fertility, and how much time you have to, you can afford to grow in the garden. Radicchio, like lettuce, it's plant, like radish, plant and harvest. Unlike tomato, a lot less work, what I'm trying to say, a lot less work. So you're very busy, then plant all these leafy greens instead of try to plant a tomato where you're gonna fail at it. Okay. Okay, now, most vegetables are, you eat the leafy greens, that's why they're called leafy greens. Tomato is considered a fruiting vegetable. Now, there are some unique varieties or crops like this one, you may never have heard of it. It's called the toothache plant, Sichuan buttons. It's originated, I guess, from China. The scientific name is here, Acmella oleracea. You can look it up, you can buy it, seeds are available to buy. This button, the flower button, before it opens up, if you bite it and chew it, and once, like your saliva forms, your lips and you'll go numb. I mean, it's like you got a shot at the dentist. I was tricked into trying it. I didn't know. I chewed it. I started drooling like crazy. I thought I was gonna die. And then my lips and gum was numb for about 20 minutes. It was fun. A fun experience to know that, okay? But as a precaution, like we must give a safety warning, please don't just eat anything. And because Joe Masabni said if it's bitter, boil it and it may be good. No, it may be bitter and poisonous. Read about it before you try it and make sure it's safe. And if the information is not available in the American dictionary, look up other countries, because what's poison for us, other countries may have found the use of you cooking it and using it. So, okay. All right, so that's the safety message. It's an ornamental. I mean, that's not an edible. You don't eat the leaves. There's no taste. There's really too much off taste. No smell, no taste. Too terrible. But it's a medicinal and it's ornamental at the same time. Some exotic plants are ornamentals. They have not beautiful red leaves, but at the same time, they are edible. I'm sure you are familiar with the ornamental cabbage that you see in the fall growing everywhere. But did you know that that also is edible? It is cabbage. It's not poisonous. It's not ornamental because you cannot eat it. It's ornamental because it looks pretty. You can still eat it. So if you ever grow that in the future and wants to start to, grow tall, remove some of the leaves and try them and cook them, and they just taste like cabbage. Okay, and some are beautiful red color, like you see here, the red amaranth. Amaranth, pigweed is a terrible weed we have, and growers have a big challenge for them. It's very prolific, grows very, terrible as a weed. But edible amaranth, there's lots of varieties, and it looks like an ornamental. So what I would classify as ornamental edible. It looks pretty in the front yard, but you can pick a few leaves or a bunch like this and cook it and eat them. Okay, it's called Chinese spinach. If you have, if it starts to get too hot, then they go into seed in the midsummer like all the other pigweeds, but they'll grow very well in the fall and they'll grow very well early in the spring. You can stir fry it, saute it, steam it, anything you can cook spinach with, you can replace it edible amaranth instead of spinach, and trust me, people don't know the difference. I'm told it's very nutritious with protein reaching as high as 58%. I've seen 39%, but it's possible. Okay, so beet greens, that's another one that is beautiful here when it's this stage. Look at this color, especially if you have that and next to red and something that's white, and you can make an American flag from all these red, white, and blue. And and they're all edible. And at the same time, you get the beets and the shoots, the young tender leaves are all edible. Some varieties, they're beet greens. So the leaf, the bulb, the beet itself does not develop too well. Some are beets, so the leaves are not very tasty. And some new varieties, the beet is medium size, but the leaves are edible. So you get both crops from the two, top and bottom. So look up the detail. Molokhia is one that I mentioned before, very popular for us, and this is how the dish looks like. It is a cousin of okra. So it is grows very well in the heat summer. It loves the summer heat. So in the middle of summer, when you don't have any leafy greens available, you can, and you miss cooking something with greens, not just cucumber and squash and tomato, all the flowers, all the fruiting vegetables, then grow some Molokhia. Other people like to grow, New Zealand spinach, but trust me, Molokhia tastes a lot better. It is, what do you call it? Here's this picture. Yes, here's the scientific name called, I'm not going to try to pronounce it. Other names is Egyptian spinach, Jew's mallow, okra leaf plant, and lots of other names. You can plant it thick like this. This is the experiment we did together. If you plant it thick like this, then you have individual stems because they're crowding each other. But if you plant them far apart, it will grow like an okra plant will grow. It has the same shape and size and look like an okra plant because they are same family and the same habit, but you only eat the leaves. And towards the end of summer, you start making seeds. So if you like to try it, don't buy an ounce, buy, I don't know, maybe 50 seeds, because one seed, one plant, you'll have 10,000 seeds. So you don't buy a lot. Very prolific seed producers. It's an excellent dish, very, very nutritious. We eat the leaves green. You can freeze it and then cook it later. You can dry it and then cook it later. So it's very versatile, and maybe that's what made it very popular, because it's nutritious, and if you don't eat it now, you can dry it and eat it 6 months later. Maybe that's what made it super popular and in those regions. And here's the picture of how the plot we did together in Beaumont with Oka hijiki, Salsola komarovi. It is native to the Asia, it really grows on the edge of the seashore. It can grow literally in salt water. You can water it with salt water. It's that tolerant, and it absorbs all that salt and doesn't kill the roots. The Oka hijiki means the seaweed that grows on land. And here's a close-up of how it looks. It's crunchy. It's salty, so if you want to cook with it, you don't have to add any salt to it, any extra salt. It's most popular in Japanese cuisine, but I'm told that in the Dutch also included with their salt, with their herring. So it's becoming more popular every way. I'm going to do some trial with it to see if it can fix salty soil, soil that's terrible, salts, and then, hey, you grow it a year or two. Will that soil become more suitable for other vegetables? Okay, Mizuna is basically like cress. It's, just like cress, just the Japanese name, Mizuna. It's very fast growing. That's like from here to here. I remember it was like a week, growing from this to that, a week to 10 days. You can eat it fresh. You can cook it when they're this small, like almost at the, you're familiar with microgreens or baby greens. You can eat it fresh in salad. Chefs like to mix it up, put a few for that zangy, lemony flavor. Or when they're much older, of course, you can cook it in stews. Pepper grass, cress is from the cress family. Or upland cress. The translation from Lebanese means poor man's pepper. So if you eat it, it's like you added salt and pepper to your dish. So it's very crunchy. It has the crunch of lettuce, and it has that peppery the black pepper, not the bell pepper, has the black pepper spice flavor to it. A great plant. Okay. What's another example is, of course, you're familiar with Swiss chard. That's not, it used to be rare. It used to be only the green that was common, but now you have new varieties that are, you see that here in the bottom right picture. Okay, and again, this is one of those that I would call ornamental edibles or edible ornamentals. So plant them where it shows, make a design that looks pretty, and then you can also eat from them. Okay. Sorrel, common sorrel or garden sorrel. Just if you say sorrel, there's this kind. Okay, it's a perennial. It has a deep taproot, and it can do very well in heavy clay soil. So if you plant it here, let's say in the Dallas area, you may not have to worry about watering it in the summer, because you'll see how big and deep the root. I've eaten, like I said, the leaves. I've never eaten the taproot. It's been grown for many years. You can puree. And it's some people say oyster, but the leaf, they say the leaves has a flavor of kiwi or sour wild strawberries. All I tasted was few leaves fresh from the garden there. I didn't taste any sour wild strawberries. Maybe I don't have good taste buds. But this is how the sorrel roots look like. See, they can be, and this is not even a mature one, and it's already 9 inches. Mature will maybe even at least 12 inches or longer, and big fat like a carrot, maybe a baby carrot, not that big. So very well suited for our conditions. I encourage you to look up recipes and try it. And when you see all that nutrition, we all should eat more vegetables. Fava bean is another one that's very popular in the Middle East and other countries. I don't know why it's not very popular here. It may not do well with a year like this, but it is very, with the storm we had, but it is very, very tolerant to minor freezes. I mean, I grew it next to kale, and they look the same when we had a frost or a minor freeze in College Station or Overton. They wilt, and then next day they perk up. And the upper here in the upper corner, that's how the picture looked like. I mean, it's a cold weather bean. I mean, you can plant it in the fall. And like I said, it's not a typical year like this. In a normal year with the minor frost and this and that, it won't bother. Snow won't bother it. It's very cold tolerant, and the first fruit that you can eat in the spring. And of course, it's in the bean family, so it will fix nitrogen. So you can, all that extra foliage, bury it in the ground or compost it and return all that extra nitrogen to the soil. Your garden will love you. Corn salad is another one that is not very popular, and it's a shame why it's not very popular. And here in bold, you see all the names. You may be familiar with mâché. I see that in lots of recipes or in restaurant, but some people call it nut salad, field salad. It has that nut flavor. Maybe that's why it's called corn salad. So when you eat it, it has a nutty flavor, not just crunchy, what I call lettuce flavor, just vegetable and crunch and water. It has a little extra nut, not bitter, has a nutty flavor. It's better to grow it in a cold climate, so it doesn't do well when it warms up because it starts to flower. But in the upper picture here, that's how it grows. As long as it's cool, it grows like a rosette. It grows a little tall, but in the late spring, early summer, that's the end of it. Unless you want to keep it to save your seeds and save a few plants to go to seed to collect your own seeds for next year. Claytonia, this is not one that anybody I ask has been familiar with or knows what it is, but for the California Gold Rush miners, it was a lifesaver because it was edible, it was not poisonous. They ate it, and what they didn't know is that it had enough vitamin C to prevent scurvy. So those lucky ones that were courageous and tried it never got sick from scurvy, and those that were, didn't know about it or didn't want to try it, they can get sick. Some people, to me, any of these unique herbs, if you want to try them, my best advice is whatever recipe you like to try with spinach, replace the spinach with any of these greens that I'm mentioning as a start before you try to do exotic things like soy sauce or fish sauce or mirin or whatever. Your own recipe that you have spinach, put the claytonia, put the sorrel, put the cress instead, and go from there. Okay, mesclun. Mesclun literally means mix. Mesclun mix, it means mix. Originally very popular in France and Spain, and now it moved to South America. It's a mix of lots of leafy greens. So when you get that seed and you plant it, you're already immediately planting at the same time arugula, radicchio, frisee or mache, mizuna, dandelion, chicory, sorrel, all of them at once. So, and then you cut them as baby greens, and it's an instant salad that you see here. This is planted right next to each other and cut and harvested right next to each other. And I bet you some of this stuff that looks like Swiss chard is also included there. It's a very healthy and nutritious salad. I bet you this can replace a vitamin pill that we can take. Okay, so look up mesclun mix or mesclun salad. Fancy salads, fancy restaurants are switching to this type of salad, and they charge you like $10 for something that you can grow for 5 cents. Microgreens. A few years ago, microgreens, we had to go into details to describe microgreens. It's still in the presentation. I'm sure many of you know microgreens are becoming very popular. What's the difference between microgreens and sprouts? Well, sprouts, like you see here, bean sprouts, or familiar with alfalfa sprouts, it is the seed that germinated, but before the cotyledons open. So basically, you're eating mostly roots, or the fleshy taproot or whatever. So it's before it opens. The minute it opens and starts to get a little bit bigger, it's a microgreen. And if it gets a little bit bigger, not just the cotyledons, and you have true leaves, then they call baby greens. And there's even different sizes of baby greens that chefs like. They want 1 true leaf, or they want 2 true leaves. So definitely the microgreens are more nutritious because you're eating more greens than the sprouts, which you're eating more white stuff. You're not eating any nutrients. Okay, and what can you grow with microgreens? Anything, any vegetable that you think is, you would never think of eating the leaves of. For example, carrots, you would never think of eating carrot tops, but when they are that small, they are edible, and nutritionists have proven that the broccoli microgreens from broccoli is more nutritious than the broccoli head per gram, per unit weight in terms of concentration of nutrients. So basically anything you have, you can grow it as a microgreen. I don't see tomato on this list, and I've tried tomato, and not fresh, maybe cooked. It is possible as a microgreen, not as a baby green, too strong. Here is another odd plant. I guess I should remove this with the purslane, with the amaranth, because it's another weed. If you're familiar with purslane, well, it is so nutritious that it has more fish oil, omega-3 fatty acid, than fish itself. I know that because I did my PhD on purslane. The weed that you hate outside, learn to eat it, and it's not a weed at all. Of course, there are varieties that have been bred to be a crop, like this golden purslane, because it doesn't grow flat like a carpet. It grows up, so it's easy to harvest. Very nutritious, very tasty. Again, you don't know what to do with it. whatever recipe you like to try with spinach, replace it with this as a start. And but I can tell you one caveat: if you to grow it once, you're gonna have it for eternity, because one plant will give you 10,000 seeds. So it's gonna be there. So you better like it. You better enjoy eating it. Otherwise, if you don't want it, then it becomes a weed. Then forget it. Okay. This is a little bit talk about microgreens and their nutrition. Of course, taste is subjective. I may not like carrot greens, but when you cook them, other people may love them, and they or as garnish in some fancy recipes. Cabbage microgreens is milder compared to radish or mustard greens, etc. This is information we can look at. Swiss chard, I've had Swiss chard as a microgreen, and it was very tasty, but I would not eat the mature plant leaf because the flavor was too much. So you have to cook it. So anyway, microgreen have great taste and very nutritious. And this is the purslane that you may be familiar with. Of course, Mexican cuisine is familiar with it. European, Middle Eastern, they call it verdulaga, which is a derivation of the Latin name portulaca, common purslane. So if you see that in your garden early in the spring, consider yourself lucky, pick it up, eat it fresh. You'll see how tasty it is. And if you cook it, it is very nutritious and also very tasty. We make spinach pies, but we remove the spinach and put the purslane in it, and you cannot tell the difference. And with that, this is the end. May not be an hour long, but I'm happy to answer questions. Let me stop sharing.
Well, thank you, Dr. Joe. Some of those I was familiar with. My mother is from Taiwan, so I've been exposed to a few of the greens that you shared, and I've tasted bitter melon when I was much younger, and I did not like it. I can appreciate it now as an adult. I can appreciate it, but it's not something I choose to incorporate heavily into my diet.
And definitely not raw. Cooked maybe, but definitely not raw.
Okay, and another thing you shared that I had never heard about was the corn salad. I had never heard of that green, or I don't even know if I've even seen that one.
Corn salad,
Yeah, I'm interested to try it now after you shared that with us.
I mean, I mentioned mâché, so maybe you're familiar with that name, mâché. So
I'm not. I have to admit I am not, but now I'm ultra curious.
and it's not too late. All of those green that we mentioned, it's not too late to grow them. It's still spring early enough. You can still get one more crop out. Maybe it's early for Molokhia because the soil is still cold, but all the others plant them and they'll start growing.
Yeah. So, okay. So we do have some questions for you.
Okay.
All right. So earlier you had mentioned about like boiling greens and trying to come up with some good ideas for that water. So Grace, who attends a lot of our programs, has a great idea. What she does is she uses that water to cook rice.
I love it. Excellent. I use it. I mentioned to you, I use it as a vegetable broth. I save it in the fridge, and then the next time I'm cooking, if they say chicken broth or beef broth, I just use it because I just want water. And instead of just plain water, I use that too. That's one way. One time I was courageous enough, I put honey and cinnamon. That is something you really have to be dedicated to get the acquired taste. I thought I'll dilute it with honey and cinnamon. No, it's still strong, but I like that idea. Cook rice with it. I love it. I will try that. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea too. I knew somebody who for example, if you use canned vegetables, they would take the liquid like from your canned corn, and they would use that to cook their rice. But I like this one even better because it's fresh vegetables. You have those nutrients in there, and you can also control any sodium or anything like that. So, great idea, Grace. And Dr. Joe, I have to give you a big thumbs up for being brave enough to try to drink the water from boiling greens. You're a brave man.
Crazy enough.
All right. So we also had a comment from Henna, who had mentioned wanting to learn a little bit more about the nutrition of the different greens. And Dr. Joe mentioned that he's not a nutritionist, but guess what? We have 2 nutrition students coming next week. So if you come to our next Grow With Us on the 11th, I can't even remember the date now, the 15th, we actually will have 2 Southwest medical students who are in the nutrition program, and they are actually going to be talking about greens, salad greens, and different kinds of greens to incorporate your diet. And if you register now on the library market, there's even a recipe for a vinaigrette that you can download and make live with our students. And so we want to get you good information there. So if you're interested in that, please join us next week. And okay, so we had a Todd. He says that he grew up in the Midwest also, and he misses rhubarb. Do you have a local source for it, or should he plan on ordering it from a nursery from the north and having it shipped down here? Because he hasn't seen it in the Dallas area.
You don't buy roots. Don't buy roots. Buy seeds from Johnny Seed, from any catalog company. Buy the seed, start growing them, start seeding them, let's say in August, September, and then plant the seedlings in the fall. Roots, you're wasting money because they will not survive after 1 year. So might as well grow it. They will never be as big as the rhubarb that you remember in Michigan. And they will never be as red because even our spring is a little bit warmer. But when you cook them, they will taste just the same. And if you like, we can do another presentation class in the future on this topic. I'll be happy to show you pictures of how I grew it. But yes, buy the seed. It's too early now. Buy the seed, plant them in the fall, and then you harvest them. You start harvest them, I don't know, April, May, and then by June, when they start wilting, even the root will start dying because it will not tolerate the heat and the diseases we have. So dig it up, throw it away, and start over. So you're growing it as an annual plant.
All right. So, and also we had a good tip from Priscilla. She said North Haven often has rhubarb. So call them and see if you can get it from them.
Okay.
All right. So, okay, we got some really good questions coming up. All right. So Debbie is asking for greens like purslane and dandelion. So like if you wanted to harvest the ones that are growing currently in your yard, which I have lots of them, just like you said,
Yeah.
how long would you need to like not put chemicals on your lawn, like fertilizers and stuff, before you could safely eat the greens that you're harvesting out of your lawn?
Oh, if you sprayed any herbicides, I would suggest you don't use those. Because they maybe have been absorbed inside. I mean, even if you wash them, they may be inside. But if it's just fertilizer or whatever, don't worry that. So if you already sprayed herbicides, don't. And I did notice something about the dandelion, since we're asking about dandelion, that here they look a little different. They have more spiny and they're a lot smaller, and they go to seed even when it's very tiny. Maybe it's a different variety or subspecies of the dandelion, but all those spines and all that look doesn't matter. You just have to pick it before it starts forming the flower heads. So the minute you see it, dig it up. Even if it's that small, dig it up, and then so like you need a lot to make a dish. But hey, you're cleaning your yard from dandelion, and at the same time you're cooking a nice dish. Purslane can be eaten fresh as a salad. I mean, you can take the leaves and add them to a fresh lettuce salad, or you when they're older and the leaves are tougher and more mature, like later in the season, that's when they are better cooked. But I don't recommend eating dandelion fresh because they have that milky juice and they're bitter. I mean, it's not poisonous, but it's bitter and it's not tasty. Okay.
Okay, because I have those spiny dandelions in my yard, and I've always been intimidated to eat them. So thank you for reminding me to get them when they're young before they flower, because yeah, they don't look really appetizing.
Exactly.
You wonder like how early people learned what to eat, what not to eat. Probably some of it was like how terrifying it looked. I'm not going to eat that because it might hurt. So.
Probably desperate, starvation, and they eat anything.
That's right. Okay, so Debbie has a question about, I'm sorry, there's Carol. Carol has a question. Do you have some recommendations of greens that can be grown in the summer here in partial shade?
Not really. I mean, if you were up north, Midwest, I'll tell you any of these greens will do fine in the shade, but you may have the shade that works for you, but the 100-degree temperature will work against you. So the only two greens is the Molokia and the New Zealand spinach. and those don't need shade. You can grow them anywhere. Those are the only green leafy greens that you can eat. Unfortunately, it's too hot. Even in the shade, it's too hot. Microgreens is the
Now,
option.
Dr. Joe,
I'm sorry.
yes, that's right. You can always do microgreens inside and have fresh greens that way. Dr. Joe, is the New Zealand spinach the same as Malabar spinach? Are they the same or are they different?
That's the same one. And I may be calling it New Zealand spinach by mistake. Let's see, Malabar spinach. Yes, they are.
Because I do know that that's a pretty popular one. It's actually not a Malabar is not a true spinach, but it tastes like spinach.
Exactly. That's very true.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. And then, and also I've heard, I haven't done this myself, that a lot of people have success with growing kale, even into the summer here. Now, and there might be some more heat tolerant kales, but you know, kale's pretty tough. It can, you know, it's going to be one of those things that outlive us, is going to be kale. All right. Okay. So Grace has a really good question. So she was unfamiliar with a lot of the different plants you covered today. Could you suggest maybe the easiest 3 or 4 for a novice to start growing?
All of these greens are very easy. If you start with a very, because like I said, it's just seeding and harvesting. If you do remember all the picture you saw, beautiful compost, beautiful raised beds, and they were just seeded and add water and fertilizer. They will all do fine with just water. Don't let them dry. The only trick, and that's where most gardeners fail at, is one of 2 mistakes. Either they seed them too deep, so they never reach the surface or make it, or they don't water regularly, so they sprout, and roots are very tender and delicate and close to the surface, and then you don't water for 2 days and they dry out. So you have 10%, you think you have 10% germination, but you really had 100% germination, but 90% died. So they're all very easy to, it's just that first stage is very critical. So what I suggest is, what I do is sprinkle them on the surface. Don't try to make trenches and sprinkle them on the surface, and then sprinkle on top of them a thin layer, thin cover of the potting mix or the soil that you have. Oh, that's it. And then every day wet that soil surface, make sure it's always moist, it never dries out. And because once they germinate and get established, then you can switch to drip irrigation, whatever, and you'll see that one-time fertilization is enough, because most of these are 40, 50 days. You don't have to worry about too much long-term fertilization. Okay.
That's a really good point, because I did the exact same thing. So I decided I was going to put some of that mix in a pot, and I did the mistake out of habit. I put mulch on top. Well, guess what? Not a single one of them sprouted, because I blocked the light with the mulch. Yes. And so now I have this pot of mulch out there. Yes. So the mulch looks great. So. All right. So Kay wanted to share that she has had good luck with letting her arugula seed in the shade. And she usually gets it to last a long time, but unfortunately the snow got it this time. But arugula is another thing that's usually pretty tough, and it can handle a lot of stuff.
And something I plan on adding to this presentation in the future is eating the flower heads from many of these plants. Nobody thinks about eating the flower of the cabbage or cauliflower or bok choy, but you look up recipes in Asia and China, they're tasty, they're crunchy, they're very good. So I always leave extra plants to go to seed, to save some seeds, but also to cook from it and eat it and see if it's just like that recipe was worth it. So that's another exotic food that you can think of, is the flower heads or flower clusters for many of these vegetables. So you have lettuce that's starting to bolt. It's not a waste. Let it go to bolt. And then the stem itself, you can peel it and cut it and cook with it. It kind of like, what do you call it? Hearts, what do you call that dish? Hearts
of palm?
Like palm hearts, yeah, kind of it tastes like that, bland flavor but crunchy and great with cooking. But also the flower head is also edible that if you saute it and cook with it. So yeah, it's a shame that we just think as a commercial grower where we just want this thing when the plant can give you three other things from it to eat.
That's a really good observation. And there is a particular type of Asian green, and I probably couldn't even pronounce it if I had it in front of me. That in like when you buy it in the store, it often has these little bitty yellow flowers. It's like a 4 petal yellow flower, and it's a green stem and stuff, and it's often sold with the flower on it. So I just saute it, stir fry it, or whatever, and
Yeah.
it's very pretty too. It adds that nice color to your
Yeah.
dish.
I mean,
Um,
we're familiar with onion and green onions, and when it goes to flower, we throw away the plant. But in France, the flower stalk is a special recipe for the flower stalk of the onion, or the chive flower stalk, or the green onion flower stalk. So that's again, and they're all nutritious and tasty. We just have to try them.
You're absolutely right. You know what? And I think I'm going to do that this year. I'm going to try some of those green onion flowers and stuff like that because that sounds like a lot of fun. So it looks like we're actually not going to keep you for an extra 30 minutes like we normally do. So, oh, okay. Someone would like to know, Dr. Joe, are you on social media? Like, are you on Instagram or some of these other social media platforms?
I wish I'm too old to be that cool. I wish I would like to learn how to do that. But beside this, or beside Facebook Live, if you like to join Aggie Horticulture, if you go to Facebook and go to Aggie Horticulture, you may see some other present videos that I made on various topics and other colleagues on lots of other topics. But yeah, no, I wish.
Now, Dr. Joe, would you be willing to share your presentation to the people who registered today?
I will be happy. I'll send you a PDF copy.
All right, great. So what will happen is in a few days, you're going to get an email from Vanessa or somebody at the library. So everyone who registered, pre-registered for this will get an email from the Dallas Public Library. It'll have a PDF copy of Dr. Joe's presentation. It'll have a link so that you can watch this again in case you missed any or you want to use it as a reference. And also Vanessa usually curates a book list and some other things like that to go along with it. And there'll be a survey so that you can help us pick future programming. And also, usually Dr. Joe has his contact information at the end of his slide presentations. You might want to add that in there real quick, Dr. Joe, so that if anybody wants to reach out to him, you can. And lastly, I'm going to close with this. Linda has invited everybody to visit the Raincatcher's Garden on Midway Hills Road. It's a demonstration garden. It's behind a church. So you have to go behind the church and you can park there. And they do have a beautiful garden. And she said a lot of the things that you mentioned here today are there in their garden, so that if you want to take a look at it or see how it's growing, that everyone is invited to come out and visit. But please also be aware of COVID and things like that. So come prepared if you do decide to go and visit. And so just remember also we have our next week program with our Greens, the Magical Food. That's going to focus on nutrition and recipes. So please register for that. And Vanessa added a link to the A&M Horticulture that you mentioned, the Facebook Live, where you can see Dr. Joe make some more appearances, and I'm sure he'll be visiting us again this year. So I want to thank everybody for joining us today, and we want you to stay safe, and hopefully we'll see you again next week.
Bye-bye.